everyone, and welcome to our panel. My name is Colleen Carroll, and I'm a content publishing coordinator at Nexus Marketing and your moderator for today's panel session. Our topic today is running a tight ship, maximizing efficiency for small associations. And I'm really looking forward to this topic and getting to hear from all of these amazing experts. But before we can jump in, I do have a few quick logistics to cover. NX Unite is made in partnership with Nexus Marketing, and the NX Unite mission is to make introductions that lead to lasting relationships and serve as a hub for connection in the mission-driven sector. As you saw in our video, on NX Unite, you can find upcoming industry events, suggested influencers to follow, trusted solutions, cause-driven podcasts, and of course, panels with experts such as these lovely folks here with me today. Today's hour-long panel will include time both for questions curated by my team and questions from you all, our audience. So if you are joining us live, you get the joy of submitting questions and topics of your own. We would love to make sure that we're addressing topics relevant to you and your situation, your circumstances. So please let us know if there's any topics you want us to cover, either directly in the chat or via the questions tab. Also, if at any point you're having any technical difficulties, my team member Anton is under the username Team NX Unite, and he will do his best to assist. So let us know in the chat that you're struggling, and we will help problem solve. I did also want to share that this panel session is being recorded. So if you get to the end of the session and the insight you heard was just so fantastic that you need to hear it a second time right away, never fear, it'll automatically be in your email inbox after the session. Give it 5 to 10 minutes and it should be there, as well as it will continue to be accessible on the NX Unite website in the on-demand panel section. So if you have any friends in the industry who you're like, can't believe they missed the session, they needed to be there, the insight was so perfect for them, please share that same landing page that you signed up through, and they'll be able to access the whole recording. All right, I'm going to jump right into some introductions. First, I'd like to introduce Matt McEwen, who's the VP of Sales and Marketing with Minute Solutions Incorporated, a professional minute-taking company that helps associations, nonprofits, and other organizations across a diverse range of industries get the most out of their meetings. He brings almost 10 years of experience as an executive for small organizations. Matt has valuable insights on how associations can get the most out of a small team and an even smaller budget. With experience in sales, marketing, HR, operations, and accounting, he knows what it's like to wear many hats, as so many leaders at small associations often need to do. Great to have you, Matt.
Thanks so much for having me, Colleen.
John Flaherty is the Vice President of Business Development at Entiva. John started his career in technology at Westinghouse, where he developed the first computer-based inventory control system and trained and managed 8 teams for on-site work at a variety of nuclear power plants. He then moved to IBM, where he served as marketing executive to address and supply colleges with computers for their classrooms. He then left IBM to work at Renex Corporation, eventually becoming the general manager running sales, marketing, and development. Over the next 20 years, Matt worked in a variety of executive positions at several MSPs and has been with Entiva for 11 years, where he serves as the VP of Development and Partner Channel at Entiva. Great to have you, John.
Thank you. Great to be
finally,
here.
Oh, glad to have you. Mark DiPinto is the marketing manager at GetQuorum, an industry-leading provider of virtual meetings, electronic proxy, voting, and notice distribution services. A self-proclaimed foodie and a sports enthusiast, Mark has seen the positive impact technology can have on organizations through his 5 years of experience working with industry-leading technology providers. Great to have you, Mark.
Thank you, Colleen. Happy to be here.
All right, we are going to jump right in, and Matt, I'm going to have you start us off with this first question. Why is it so important for small associations to keep an eye out for inefficiencies?
Yeah, great question, Colleen. So I think the thing with small associations and small teams is you're often scrambling, right? You're wearing so many hats, you're doing so many things. You end up using a lot of Band-Aid solutions to kind of survive and get through a particular problem. But the problem with Band-Aid solutions is that they tend to become pretty permanent, right? So if you are not doing a consistent review of your processes and checking out for inefficiencies, then you're not going to catch those Band-Aid solutions before they do become too ingrained in your workflow and in your culture. So, if you're ever kind of asking the question, why do we do it this way? And a common answer is, well, that's just the way we've always done it. It's a pretty sure sign that you're not reviewing those inefficiencies enough, that you're not checking out of those processes. So put it in the schedule, task someone to make sure that they're bringing this up at team meetings. And even if it's kind of department by department, make sure you're taking a look and asking questions, right? And just, not going along with the assumptions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for starting us off. John, I'm going to turn the same question to you. Why is it important that we keep an eye out on being efficient for small associations?
Well, we work with a lot of associations, and one of the things that's true for all of these associations is they're rarely the only association addressing that market segment. And so inefficiencies can be, as Matt had indicated, an indication that your Band-Aid, your legacy solution is impacting the performance of your association. So let's face it, in a competitive market, if you're not doing the best you can for your membership, retention is going to be a problem. It also has the other side of being a problem for retention of staff. And so that kind of churn and turnover can become extraordinarily expensive and costly to an organization. And in the long term, if it happens long enough, it'll impact your reputation as an organization.
Definitely. All right, Mark, same question to you. Why is it important we keep an eye out on this?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think John brought up a really great point as far as the competitive market landscape for a lot of these associations. And when you're a smaller association, having these inefficiencies could really have a larger impact on your membership as a whole. And that's why it's so important to keep on top of mind. While the Band-Aid solutions, like Matt said, can be great and be a great fix as a long-term solution, it can really be hindering the association's ability to reach their goals, affect their membership, and should always be top of mind to ensure that they're providing their members the best experience, as well as reaching their goals the best way possible, and really allow them to bring their skills and their mission to the forefront and not let these inefficiencies hinder them from reaching those goals.
Definitely. All right, we're off to a great start. I'm glad we all agree that we need to be efficient, as that is the topic of the panel. Awesome. John, I'm going to have you start us off this next question. What innovation from the past few years, it could be either technical or operational, has had the power to help our associations become more efficient?
It's an innovation. In a lot of ways, it's the innovation of the people running those organizations to look at opportunities to do things a little bit differently. Obviously, during the pandemic, everybody was remote. And so in many cases, those organizations had the technical capability to support remote users. They just had never configured them. And then having their hand forced, they now have embraced that sort of that remote model, which in many ways is really important to these days, is important to client or staff retention because people don't have to go in the office every day. They can maybe be there once or twice a day. And a lot of staff people really like that. And folks who would have maybe have had to have left because a spouse got redeployed or they had to go take care of an aging parent. Well, now you get to keep those valuable staff members. And you can also look outside of your geographic area. Once upon a time, most of these associations never looked out of their local environment. Well, now they have this broader geographic palette, and they can bring in superior people that they may not have previously considered because they just weren't in the geographic area. And also over the last couple of years, I've talked to a couple of dozen companies or organizations rather that have decided they don't need a central office anymore. And so reducing that capital expense for something that you thought you had to have that really wasn't giving you any real value, that's really been one of the big driving forces that we've seen coming out of this. And folks leaning in and leveraging technology to advance their organization and their organization's mission.
Absolutely. For all the challenges the past few years have presented, it has forced us to adapt and grow. And I think a lot of us would never have considered working hybrid and are now, it's hard to imagine going back to a world of fully in person.
Right.
Awesome. Mark, turning this question to you, what kind of changes have we seen in the past few years and what should we learn as associations?
Yeah, well, Colleen, I might be a bit biased working in the tech industry for my whole career, but overall the past few years, seeing the level of which associations and organizations are adopting technology. As John mentioned in his points, the pandemic changed the way associations need to operate. At the beginning, there was leaps and bounds, and it was a shaky environment where everyone was like, okay, what do we do? But in the time since, we really recognized the ability for associations to leverage technology, really adopt and embrace it, and use it in their day-to-day activities and the ways they connect with members and overall run as an organization as a whole, and really understand the true value that having proper technical solutions not only makes them more efficient, but overall a better experience for everyone involved, whether you're the organizer, the members, and really bringing a way for especially smaller associations to do more than they thought was even imaginable, because the resources and opportunities and the automation that technology provides them in their associations and the ways that they operate.
Awesome. I'm with you. I think the technology is super crucial. All right, Matt, same question to you. What have you seen the past few years? What should we kind of note?
Yeah, echoing John's point a little bit, COVID gave all associations, especially small associations, all organizations, a once in a lifetime opportunity to challenge all the assumptions they made, to, look themselves in the mirror and be like, well, yeah, we thought maybe we couldn't have virtual only meetings. Clearly we can. We thought that we need an office. Clearly we don't necessarily need it, at least to the extent we did. So really, I think the biggest innovation, as opposed to a specific one that I look at, is just this innovative way of looking at things differently, being able to kind of completely broaden your horizons. So, and not just, John mentioned looking for staff outside of your local area, huge advantage, again, especially for small associations who might also be located in small towns, huge advantage, but also thinking outside the box in terms of looking at the gig economy, right? So do you need to hire someone to do a certain role? Can you go in a different direction where you can work with somebody anywhere in the world to design your newsletter, anywhere in the world to, design the different membership advertisements that you're putting out there? So these are just a lot of things that weren't on people's radar before. They were working out of their brick and mortar place. They were hiring people in their area, but now that they're just being opened up to new tech, new ways of thinking, the opportunities kind of abound. It's pretty exciting, I think, if you're a small association, that you have a lot more tools in the toolbox that you used to.
Totally agree. I think it's a really exciting time. Awesome. Mark, I'm going to have you start us off with this next question. For associations, kind of like we've been talking about, who are working in a hybrid or sometimes fully remote setting, what do they need to be making sure that they're staying efficient on? What do they need to keep in mind when they're not in person?
Yeah, no, for sure, Colleen. And I think that the biggest challenge for associations off the initial get-go when adopting a fully remote or a hybrid setup is not adjusting the processes. While the personnel or the goal may be the same for the association, the way that we're working is changing. And associations need to be diligent and willing to adapt, whether it is looking for external resources, whether that's personnel, like Matt mentioned with the gig economy, and looking at the resources that are available in that area, adopting new technology, or overall just adapting the processes. While the goal may be the same, the way that we're working is different, and associations need to be diligent to ensure that the processes and workflows that they were using prior to this change in the way that we work still suits the way that they're working, to ensure that they're gaining maximum efficiency and reaching their goals the best way that they can.
Definitely. All right, same question to you, Matt. What do we need to be thinking about when we're working in a hybrid or fully remote environment?
Yeah, so Minute Solutions has always been a fully virtual company. It has never had a head office. So, something that when they hired me, actually, I thought they did very well is really drilling down into, not just asking, do you have personal initiative, drilling down into whether or not I was suited to work remotely, but more importantly, as a member of the management team, whether or not I could effectively manage a team remotely. Okay, because it's two different skill sets. There's a lot of people who can be great in-person bosses. They have this, those interpersonal skills. They've done that their whole life. They know how to manage a team that's in their office, but it's a different set of skills. It's a different set of tools that you need to manage a remote team and make sure that they do stay interconnected. So you have to look at the strategies and make sure that these people have the strategies and know how to use the tools, to use the tools to track projects across remote teams, to prevent silos, to increase communication, whether it's Slack or otherwise, without letting it be a distraction. And, ensuring that these, a great way to do that too is, ensuring that you're using KPIs to keep everyone on track, right? Keep everyone honest and making sure that you're reviewing them regularly. Because when you are out of sight, out of mind, it can be easy to just assume that someone's doing their job, and then things are getting a little bit too out of control and things are becoming a little bit too inefficient before you're monitoring it. So make sure that you have some set goals, some set KPIs that you can review together, and to be on top of that. And the other thing I always say to the remote team that I work with is, when you have ideas come up or questions or challenges, back in the day, we would just pop into the office and chat about it and work through it, right? So you have to make sure that you're jotting down those ideas, you're hopping on the phone, that you're not losing those, because they're so important, those questions. And sometimes people just sweep them under the rug because it's like, well, I'm sitting in my basement working, I'm just going to figure it out myself. And that can lead to problems becoming bigger than they need to be. So encourage that to happen, but also provide a forum where, whether it's in a weekly meeting or whatever, however it makes sense for your team, provide a forum for people to bring these to the forefront. And, maybe ask people every week to bring in, a positive, a negative, a challenge. So it just gets the wheels turning and makes them think. And these are all things that help kind of bring a more remote team together and make sure that you're managing them well.
Definitely. I think that list is very powerful, that list of ideas. It's just a fleeting moment can be a brilliant idea when it's actually workshopped by an entire team.
Right.
Awesome. All right, John, you know the drill. Anything you want to add about hybrid and fully remote work for associations?
Sure. I think just encapsulating what Mark and Matt said, I think the thing that you want to avoid is not deciding that, pandemic's over, we can go back to doing things the good old fashioned way that we have before. And I also think that you want to continue, we've had that challenging period, and now you have this opportunity to move forward and continue to challenge those situations. Not just go, okay, it's all over, everybody back in the office, and let's just go back to meeting at the coffee machine. And I do think that one of the things that's really important in a hybrid or a fully remote is, sort of echoing Matt's point, communication is king. I would be willing to bet that the amount of Zoom and chat conversations among fellows of the same organization has probably gone up 100-fold over the last couple of years. And I think that that's a really good and positive thing. And in some ways, that new form of communication might even be more effective than it was when you were all in the same office, because, you had to sort of run into them or go interrupt their office. And now you can just jump on a quick chat and say, hey, what do you think of this? So I really think that, you have to, stop looking in the rearview mirror and just go forward.
Definitely. John, I'm going to stick with you for this next question. Our association professionals are busy, particularly professionals at smaller associations. What small change could they make to their practices that could have a big impact on their association without overwhelming by adding too much at once?
So one of the big trends that we've seen since the pandemic is an openness to start using outside vendors. We talked about gig professionals and that sort of thing. What happens in a lot of associations, we've certainly seen it a lot over the last couple of years with our clients our associations became our clients. And there was somebody who had a primary role in the organization, but he was also, arranging events, and was also the person who was chiefly responsible for any IT things that came up. And you just sort of looked at that and said, what do you do after lunch? It's just you have to keep a good eye on the meter of what you're expecting your people to do, because people burn out, people get frustrated. And even though it may be adding an additional expense to bring in a third party, whether that's for accounting purposes or outside counsel or IT support services, or someone to do the recording, the note taking for your events, or helping you with the platform to have your meetings, it's important to get people who are good at that, who can take that burden off of your internal folks so that they can perform their primary job. If their primary job is servicing membership, and you have them spending half their day working on, John and Judy's computer to try and figure out why their printer isn't working, where for a relatively small additional fee, you could outsource that and free that person up to do their primary job as best they can. And I think that's really important to improving efficiency, is to get people as focused on their primary task as possible.
Definitely. I think all of us have been pulled away from a really important task for a kind of secondary job. And so avoiding that would be great. All right, Matt, turning this question to you. Any advice for small changes that association professionals could make that wouldn't overwhelm but could have a really big impact?
Yeah, such a great point, John, helping people focus on their primary job, because that's what happens in small associations. Jobs get added on and added on and added on. Next thing you know, you're not doing what you were hired to do. One like kind of very specific thing that you can do just in terms to try to get some time back. It's really difficult for association professionals who are wearing so many hats to actually kind of step back and focus on the big picture and think about what's really going to move the needle, because they're trying to keep up with their inbox. They're trying to put out all the fires. They're just trying to they're being too task driven. It can be really difficult. And, the emails are one thing, but there's so many distractions today. So, something that if you can, and it'll depend on your job, maybe you can change the way that you're dealing with emails. If you're in a position where you get so many emails, it's hard for you to actually tackle big projects. Maybe set aside specific times where you're going to look at your inbox and respond to emails. That might be once an hour. That might be at 9 a.m., noon, 4 p.m. And it's going to depend on how you like to work and your role. I work in sales and marketing. I got to be pretty attuned to my inbox at all times. So it's not going to work for everybody, but I know that some people I work with use these strategies and to help them focus on those in between hours. And then, okay, now I'm going to tackle my inbox or my phone calls, whatever the case may be, for this chunk of half hour. And then I'm going to turn back to working on the budget for next year. Because if you don't set aside time for those big projects, then they just get pushed out. They get pushed out and pushed out. So it's a little change, but with the amount of correspondence that's going around these days, it can have a significant impact on your day.
Absolutely. All right, Mark, same question to you. Any advice for small changes that could have a big impact?
Yeah, and John and Matt both made excellent points there. I think to add on to that, one big thing for associations to remember is just to sometimes take a step back. Really take that moment to take a step back, take a bird's eye view of what's going on in the association, how people are working, how the association is running, and take the time to really evaluate, okay, can we do something better? Whether it's adopting a platform to maybe help with membership retention, maybe it's outsourcing to additional resources to help your team work more efficiently, or maybe it might be a personal thing where you look at how you're managing your inbox or how you're doing your day-to-day tasks, but really taking that time to focus and say, okay, let's take a bird's eye view as far as how the association is running. We may be getting what we need to get done, but is there a way to do it better? And always looking with that mindset as far as how can we improve. It doesn't have to be a long time. It doesn't have to be a half-day session with the whole team. It could just be 15, 20 minutes, once a month to look back and say, okay, we're doing this really great, but maybe there's a way we could do it better. And really just prioritizing that time and have that discussion, whether it's internal or with the team, to really review, because sometimes, especially in a hybrid or fully remote environment, with that loss of connection where you might just be bumping into people in the coffee break room, or just a spontaneous team meeting where you all connect and kind of just chit chat about what's going on, to really make sure you're setting aside that time and prioritizing the opportunity to look and ways to enhance the way that you're doing things.
Yeah, I think that's really important advice. I think we can get focused on just keeping on moving forward and like it's working now, we'll just keep going. We don't have time to look back, but we're only going to hurt ourselves by doing that. Awesome. I have one more question I'm going to sneak in before I'm going to move over to our questions that our audience members submitted in with registration. And again, reminder for anyone tuning in live, if they want to add questions, the chat is open. But my final question, Matt, I'm going to have you start us off with this one, is what do you all see as the future of associations, and how can associations, and particularly our smaller associations, prepare today for said future?
Yeah, something I've been thinking about a lot is with these associations is that, now millennials are now the largest kind of generational cohort in the workforce. Coming up behind them is Generation Z. And Generation Z has very different expectations and a very different thoughts on kind of what the workplace should look like, how they engage in communities. I don't think associations should take for granted that they're going to be looking for the same things. Maybe people are a part of your association because a huge part of it is they want a sense of community. Well, this is a generation that grew up online, exclusively. They're kind of the first ones that's essentially all they know in terms of, the internet always being a part of their day. They find communities in other ways too, right? So they have different expectations in terms of how they're going to be trained, how they're going to be mentored. They absorb content in so many ways and so many different ways. And so I think that if associations are looking into their future and assuming that they can kind of keep doing the same thing to appeal to that generation and to appeal to those members and try to bring them into their association, I think they'll be in for a bit of a shock, and they're going to need to kind of understand how to adapt what they're doing. And it's not an easy task because they still have to appeal to other generations as well, right? So I think that's something that associations should really start at least thinking about and gathering some data and some understanding on, because it's coming. That generation is coming for sure.
Definitely. I'm so glad you brought that up. This is our third association panel of the week, and Gen Z has been brought up every single time. So I think everyone is kind of keeping an eye on that. Exactly. Yeah. I think, everyone recognizes that is the future. It is what's about to change. Awesome. Mark, I'm going to turn this same question to you. What do you see as the future, and how can we prepare?
Well, Colleen, I'm going to piggyback off Matt being the only one on the panel that's the borderline Gen Z/millennial here. So I could definitely test that the way that we interact with associations and pretty much everything that we do is very different than the older generation. And not to say that, there's certain things that should stay the way they are with in-person meetings and the way that we connect. But I think the important thing for associations to remember, and they should be actively looking to doing, is begin making those small transitions. I could say over the past 3-4 years, especially in the event side of things and membership engagement, the full-on integration adoption of virtual events, for example, and almost every single in-person event I've been to has also had a virtual component. And that's a great example to see the baby steps that associations could take to start doing that transition. It doesn't have to be a flip of the switch overnight transition where you're going to overhaul everything. The way that we communicate, the way that we meet, the way that we engage is going to go fully towards the Gen Z millennial way of doing it. It should be a slow adoption. And there's a lot of proactive things that associations could do, whether it's adopting an online forum to connect, offering the opportunity to do email communications, add a virtual component, or embrace more virtual workshops and learning opportunities for new members, rather than expecting, okay, it has to be this way, or if we're going to do it, it has to be a full throttle 360. You could do baby steps to make it a more seamless experience and make those little transitions over time. And then eventually at one point, grow with the membership as the older generation steps back and the newer generation steps in.
Great insight. Thank you. All right, John, over to you. Anything you want to add about the future and how we can prepare?
Well, it's hard to add a whole lot of new because they've covered pretty much everything. But I do think that it just sort of goes to my earlier point of don't stop looking forward. Don't go back to the old way of doing things. I think over the last couple of years, associations have been doing much more stuff online, webinars, that sort of thing, and getting away from the, hey, we had our 3-day annual convention in Nashville. And I think the proclivity of people to go to those, I think there's an older generation, myself included, that we're very inclined to do those, but the newer generations are much more interested in online, maybe a little less interested in, traveling and going to in-person events, because their attitude is, what's the point? I can get everything from my gaming chair at home. So it's, but I think that associations have to be careful not to move too quickly or eliminate, everything that was old in favor of everything that's new. So and really it just goes back to communication with your membership and making sure that you're feeding them the information and the value of their association with your organization in a way that makes sense to them.
Definitely. I think keeping your members in mind at all times is really important. Again, a message I saw across all association panels this week. Awesome. I want to transition over to the questions based on what people submitted with registration. So we've talked a lot today about the power of innovation or the danger of innovation, and the need for changing and trying something new. But while some team members may be really ready for that, ready to jump in, often team members are not working alone. There are boards or leaders or higher ups or just other people involved that might not fully understand the need for such a transition. And that was a question came in of like, how do I get my team on board with a change or something new? So kind of a big, broad question, but John, can I have you start us off with this one?
Sure. So if you have management that's resistant to change, or teammates that, really the way to convince people is with information and facts. So if you're an association, you probably have other associations that you're familiar with and people that you know in those organizations, or maybe you bring in a professional that can bring an outside view in and say, listen, this is a new direction. We know it is a new direction, but here's the data. Here's the facts. Here's what other associations in similar space and size are doing, and what's working for them and what's not working for them. And certainly new ideas aren't all created equal. Some of them are bad ideas. So, but I do think a lot of times people are more receptive to an independent voice. That well, why do we do it that way? Because we always did it that way. One of my least favorite bosses years ago used to say, when asked why we're doing it that way, he would say, because I said so. So that's where I think an outside voice can be very, very useful and very persuasive to help move an organization or a team to accept and embrace new ideas.
Definitely. Mark, anything you want to add in terms of encouraging team member buy-in when trying something new, adding new tech, all that good stuff?
Yeah, to build on to John's point about information, I think it's a crucial component when making these sorts of transitions, but also to go with the mindset when there is reluctancy from the team to position a way where you're demonstrating value for them. How does this going to enhance their workflows, the ways that they conduct their jobs, and overall improve their lives? And also to be understanding if there is reluctance. Why is the reluctance? Especially when you're working with different generations, and there's some very, very savvy of the baby boomer generation, but there is, especially when the mindset of we've done this way for so many years and it's worked really well, you may get some pushback. And having that conversation with them, communicating, okay, we understand, this is what industry trends are looking like, this is what we could expect by adopting these new ways of doing things, and overall having that communication, as well as be more open to hearing their point of view, as well as guiding them when they need that assistance, because it may be a fear of the unknown, especially when something's been done for maybe 20, 30 years and it's worked really, really well. The change to say, okay, we're going to adopt this way could create some pushback, and overall just have that conversation, be understanding, and provide the information to build that confidence in those individuals.
Definitely. Matt, anything you want to add on this? Otherwise, I can have you start us off with the next question.
Yeah, just quickly, it's a great question because it's something that we just see with the associations. There are so many decision makers involved, right? Especially if it's something that will need board approval, like community approval. Like you're not just dealing with one voice, so you really do have to make the case. And just to add to Mark's point, show them how it'll change their workflow, it'll improve their workflow, and let them know that you're going to support them along with it. You're not just going to dump the change on it. Tell them how you're going to help them along with it, so it can become a reality and it's not just something they give up on from the get-go. And the other thing, especially if you're a small association, you can do, and you're trying to bring in outside help, you're trying to outsource something because you know it's the right thing for your organization, tell the vendor what you need them to speak to, what problem you're trying to solve particularly. So when they give you the information that's pitching their services, you can speak to the specific points that you're trying to share with you, and make them do some of the work, right? Make it very clear what your needs are, make them show the solutions that they're going to provide, and help them make the case for you. Take a little bit of work off your plate.
Fantastic advice. Awesome. Another question came in being like, Not the first one to run an association. What mistakes should I avoid? What has been done before, tried before, and we just shouldn't do it again? So Matt, I'll have you start us off if you don't mind. Any kind of common mistakes that our associations should just avoid?
Common mistakes associations should avoid. Yeah, I mean, we've spoken a little bit about it, but assuming that what's been done in the past is what should be done. So again, make sure you're taking a step back to review those processes and ask questions. I mean, just because you're being brought in to be the leader or run an association, it doesn't mean that you have to come in with the mindset that you have to show everyone that you know what needs to be done, that you need to, put your stamp on the organization. What you really need to do is hear people out and understand from the bottom up what is going on, what the problems are. And that's going to give you a huge jump on finding those solutions. Of course, you're coming into the job with plans, you have things you want to do. They wouldn't have hired you otherwise. But once you're in, talk to everybody you can, solicit feedback, whether that's one-on-ones, surveys, listening tours. It'll depend on the organization, but try to get as much feedback on the ground from the people dealing with members, from the people dealing with the hard problems that you're trying to solve. Because as an outsider, it's great to have a fresh set of eyes, of course, because you are going to be able to, attack something differently from a different angle. But if you couple that with the insight of the people who know the organization inside and out, you're gonna have a much better time getting off to a good start and avoiding some of the mistakes that maybe were made in the past.
Fantastic. Mark, any missteps to avoid for our smaller associations?
Yeah, Colleen. So I think one thing for associations to remember is don't shy away from creativity. As Matt was saying, as far as collecting feedback and building a level of communication to get different understanding, don't be reluctant to change as far as being creative. It doesn't have to be an overall 360 change. It can work in cohesion with what you've done in the past, but don't shy away from new opportunities. Take that leap of faith in something that may be a little bit more outlandish or something out of the comfort zone of the association, but willing to give it a try, because it's the only way that in many cases they'll see new results and may have some real positive impacts. And I think that over the past few years, a lot of associations have been forced to make change, and a lot of them are realizing the impact, whether it's adopting a new technology or a new working format with virtual and hybrid working environments. It's really opened their eyes and should be opening their eyes to see when you take that risk and you take that change, what opportunities could come from that, and really overall go in day to day with that creative mindset and say, what's something new we could adopt and take an educated try at for overall better results.
Fantastic. John, anything you want to add about mistakes our association should avoid?
Well, and again, I'm probably coming from this at a very a guy who spent his entire career in technology. But one of the mistakes I often see is organizations are all about the people within the organizations, but they fail to realize that they can leverage technology to do all of those people things that they want to do better. They can leverage technology to communicate with their staff better. They can leverage technology to do things, to automate processes that will free up their staff to do other things. They can leverage technology to better communicate with their membership and maybe offer additional features and benefits that they haven't in the past. And a lot of times, particularly in small associations, you will come across and they will have a staff that's been there more than 10 years. And those folks tend to really get rooted into the way they've done it before. And it's like, well, we just do it this way rather than moving from paper to digital or, to on-prem to a cloud-based solution. So I think it's one of the levers that you want to make sure that you pay attention to in the organization, sort of people, technology, process. So that's where I see a lot of folks making mistakes.
Definitely. John, I'll have you start us off with this next question. It can feel like best practices are always changing, as we're saying. Things are always changing. Do you have any advice for tools or resources for our association professionals who are trying to keep up with the trends, but again, they have a smaller organization, might not have a ton of time to dedicate to understanding what these new best practices are?
Sure. And this again, it's, again, because we're in technology and security compliances for a variety of different industries are constantly changing. And it's virtually impossible for a small association that's touching one of these compliance or best practices areas to stay on top of it all the time. And I know this sounds a little bit like a broken record, but go out and engage people who do that all the time, because like we have a security division. Those guys, God bless them, they follow those trends day in and day out, and they move all the time. And they change all the time. And if you don't have somebody who's dedicated to watching that stuff, you just don't know. Everyone said, oh, let's move to 2-factor authentication. Well, now they're saying that's not good enough. You got to go to 3-factor authentication. Well, if you're, your typical association professional who's been doing events or membership engagement, how the heck are you going to be able to focus on that? You just can't. And so I think tapping into expertise that's outside of the organization, or if you are lucky enough to have somebody who is expert inside the organization, listen to them. And don't think just because you made a decision last year that it's going to work for next year, because technology is changing, the threats are changing, the competition is changing. So you want to make sure that you stay on top of that. And a lot of times that's reaching out to people who specialize in those areas.
Definitely. Matt, any tools or resources you want to highlight for association professionals who are trying to stay on top of best practices?
Yeah, I'd say the next best thing to what John described in terms of speaking to the people who are focused on that specifically is, if you're a member of a larger association, such as the American Society of Association Executives, or whatever the case may be in your industry, use that resource. And if they have a forum where you can post questions, ask people who are in the same position as you that are very likely dealing with similar challenges. Whatever you think you're facing, I'm sure somebody else has faced it, and people are willing to help. So, go out to your fellow association executives that are, even if they're not in a similar field, they might still be dealing with security issues that, like John's been talking about. They're still dealing with membership, engagement issues. So ask the questions, see what comes back. Don't assume that you have to figure this out yourself. Act on your network that you've built over time in this space, and take advantage of it, because people, like I said, are willing to help. And especially if they've gone through something very difficult, they'll tell you the tips to help it be a little bit easier for you.
Wonderful. Mark, any tools or resources you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, just to echo Matt and John's points about communication. It really is a very valuable tool for associations, especially the small ones with a lack of resources compared to some other organizations, but it is such a powerful tool. Whether it's engaging with your membership or other association executives, having those conversations, not being afraid to ask questions, and overall have open-ended dialogue about the challenges that your association may be facing is crucial to really leveraging the capabilities and the power of your network to ensure that you are staying on top of these practices as the best that you can.
Fantastic. All right. The time is racing by, so I think we'll have time for 2 more questions and then we'll wrap up. I want to talk a little bit about determining success with this. We're always going to be moving forward and always growing, but any advice, and I think we've touched on this a little bit, for how to evaluate whether you're doing a good job, or find the places where you could kind of pick yourself up and improve? That kind of evaluation, any strategies with that? Mark, can I have you start us off with this one?
Yeah, for sure, Colleen. I think the most important thing for association is always going to be KPIs. This goes for any organization. By having a set of KPIs that you're looking to reach is going to be the easiest way for you to measure the level of success for your association. By having those concrete goals that you're looking to achieve, it provides your team a path and a goal that they can work together in unison, and also to give the most factual indicator whether or not you are achieving the goals that you are looking to accomplish as an association. And it's really, really important to set those from the groundwork and work your way towards those, always monitoring. You may need to tweak as the landscape changes, but overall going with that strong set of goal and making clear indicators of what makes our goal accomplished is going to be super, super important.
Fantastic. Matt, any advice for determining success, evaluating how you're doing so far?
Yeah, it can be difficult, especially in small associations. You're so busy to, plan ahead, but you have to set aside time to set those goals that Mark's talking about and put thought into it. And don't just set the goals, in the C-suite or as the executive director and kind of dump that on everybody and expect them to get on board. You have to bring the key players into the conversation. You have to understand what their challenges are and what tools they have and what you have to invest in them to be able to achieve those goals. So by the time those goals are delivered to the team, and I'm a huge believer in having, open company-wide or association-wide team goals that everyone's working towards. But by the time those come across, they shouldn't be a huge surprise where you're putting up a number that people are like, whoa. They should see it and have some idea how you got there already, feel like they've had input in the process and that they have a stake in it and they have some ownership in it. And that's going to make your goals not just, more attainable, but it's going to make everyone feel like they're working like more of a cohesive unit and that you do value their opinion and the work that they put into that.
Wonderful. All right, John, anything to add about determining success?
Sure. And I agree with both Matt and Mark that communication with the staff is really important. You don't want to walk in and go, hey, we're gonna do this, and you guys had no input into it. And establishing goals are really, really important. But one of the things that I always think is really important to determining success is make sure that between where you are today and that ultimate goal that you've identified some landing points. This is 10% of the goal, this is 20% of the goal, this is 70% of the goal. Because if you set a goal and you don't achieve it 100%, if you haven't established those in between steps, well, it's like, oh, we failed. Well, maybe we're 80% of the way there, which is, I think, an encouraging place to be if you've set a very aggressive goal. Hey, we're almost there. So we do a little more effort and we can get there. So I think that making sure that there are increments between where you are and where you want to be is really important to making sure people don't lose faith.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Our final question for the day for each of our panelists has to do kind of with looking beyond this session. So we've dedicated this hour to efficiency for small associations, but there's obviously a ton of topics that we could have dedicated this hour to related to the world of associations. So I'd love to hear from each panelist kind of what's one topic or conversation you're hoping associations will keep in mind in the coming months, whether it's a kind of passion project or topic of yours, or just something that you think is really timely for the association space. John, can I have you start us off with this question?
Sure. I think, one of the things that I would like to see associations look towards is what they're going to do next. Mm-hmm. Okay, we've come out of this pandemic, and now where do we go from here? Let's start developing a roadmap for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. How we're going to grow membership, how we're going to, are we going to grow staff? Are we going to, through efficiencies or what have you, or outside vendors, make that staff more efficient locally. So I really think the key thing for me is what's next in the movie. Where do we go from here? And I think that's one of those things that associations should all be thinking about right now.
Definitely a super important conversation. All right, Mark, turning this over to you. Any topics or conversations associations should be keeping in mind for the next few months?
Yeah, so one off the top of mind is in terms of member engagement and how associations communicate with their members. I feel whether it's in regards to their annual general meeting or just the ongoing communications in which associations connect with their members is really taking a backseat and looking for ways to evolve the way that they communicate and engage with their members, and really take the time to grow with their membership, especially with the rise of millennials and Gen Z entering the memberships, ensuring that they're providing them with a accessible, inclusive way to connect amongst each other and with the association in a 21st century type of way.
Wonderful. All right, Matt, any topics or conversations we should be keeping in mind?
Yeah, a topic I'd interested in like to see discussed is, we've talked a lot about the gig economy and just kind of the changing way that people are working. And, what is the opportunity there for associations? I mean, how can associations support these workers? How can they advocate for their interests? What opportunities are there for associations to kind of to work with that group? Before, if you were working with an interior designer, and you were from the Institute of Interior Design, they were probably working for a larger firm. But now they might be working on their own from their house in, anywhere in the country. And so, but they still need support. They still need resources. They still want to network with their fellow professionals. So what does that look like? I think it's just a bit of a changing dynamic, but there's opportunity there. I think it's interesting, and I would like to see that discussed.
Me too. All right. With that, we have reached the end of our panel. I want to give a big thank you to our panelists. I know if we were in an in-person setting, there would be a round of applause. So know that I'm sending that to you in our virtual world. I also want to thank everyone who attended live, watching the recording, whether you're watching a week from now, a month from now, a few months from now. Thank you for taking time out of your day. Hope you learned something and hope you will join us for future panel sessions. We have a packed fall and winter of panels. We are planning panels all the way through April of 2023 at this point. So please keep an eye out on the NX Unite website, as well as the NX Unite LinkedIn, or you can find me on LinkedIn for any association related panels. We also have nonprofit, higher ed, faith-based, K-12 panels. So all sorts of things out there. Keep an eye out. Please join us for future panels. And if you are going to join us for a panel session, I recommend making an account on NX Unite. It's entirely free, but that means when you attend future sessions, you can start earning what's called cause coins, which are a kind of incentive program that when you amass enough of them, you'll be able to get some discounts on industry software, as well as some free consultations with some of our friends in the industry. So if you're going to join us for future association panels, might as well be getting that extra benefit. All right, that is it from me. Thank you again to our panelists. Thanks for taking time out of your day. Really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope everyone has a nice rest of your day.
Thanks, Colleen.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.